Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Week 1 is officially in the books. Let's talk about some Monday Night Football real quick. When it comes to the Steelers, Big Ben started off a bit slow, but once he got into a rhythm, he kind of looked like the Big Ben of old, made some beautiful throws, especially that throw on the sideline. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's in the contract year, and he showed up for that game. The Steelers' defense, I've said going into the season, that is going to be the thing. I believe that's going to carry the team because I didn't know how Big Ben was going to look. Had a bit of an injury scare. He started limping early in the game, but he seems to have walked it off. Maybe just had a little tweak, just had to walk it off a little bit. But nonetheless, thought the Steelers looked good. For the Giants, Daniel Jones looked more impressive than I thought he would in a new offense, with a new head coach, with a new offensive scheme. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I blame that loss entirely on their play caller, Jason Garrett. He tried to run the football at some of the most inopportune times with Saquon Barkley when the run game was not working. I thought they should have put the ball more in Daniel Jones' hand. And yes, he did make some really Daniel Jones-esque throws. He did make some mistakes. That's kind of to be expected. He's a young quarterback, and it's a new system. But I really do think that the Giants had a shot to win that game, and that Jason Garrett kind of screwed them. And God, what there was a quote that came out he had made where he said, as long as we can kick it every single drive, basically, then he's fine. That's a loser's mentality, whatever. As for the other game with the Titans, yeah, they kind of look the way I thought they would. Their offensive line is not as good as it was last year. Obviously, they lost Jack Conklin, then Taylor Lewan ended up going out. Their offensive line, though, at least against Denver, it matched up pretty evenly. Derrick Henry, while he did have over 100 yards, they had to give him the ball 30 times. He averaged like 3.9 yards a carry. It wasn't the most efficient game. I thought they should have honestly thrown more with Ryan Tannehill, done more play action. Corey Davis came alive. He's in a contract year. Their kicking game needs to be fixed. There is a reason Gostkowski is no longer with the Patriots. His confidence seems shot, and even though he did hit the one that put the Titans up finally, and that won the game for him, it wasn't good. It really wasn't good. And then as for Denver, this team is going to be tough. I believe this team is going to really compete, especially when they're up in Mile High. But the loss of Von Miller, the loss of Jawan James, I just think that's going to be too much, and that's really going to spoil this team's chances to really make the playoffs. I like Drew Lock. I like their running back stable. Their receiving core is really good. Jerry Jeudy, he ran some great routes. Their defense I think is going to play tough all year, but the injury to Von Miller and the loss of their top offensive tackle, I just think is too much. And so I think that all the predictions this team is going to be a wild card team are just not going to come true. But nonetheless, we got some topics I'm excited to talk about today. I already know who the MVP of this NFL season is going to be. I think you do too. And I think the only thing that's going to stop him from winning the MVP would be his own team. And it looks like this season, they're not going to do that to him. 2 teams won in week 1, and I think the stories are just great because of everything the teams have had to deal with. We're going to talk about that. Burrow, he looked good. Baker, yikes. Big yikes. And they're the Thursday night game. So, well, I guess I'll go ahead and I'll save my opinion on that for actually later in the podcast. I won't spoil anything now. And then my final topic of the day, we're gonna get into the 10 things that shocked me the most from week 1. I'm trying to decide if I want to do this every single week, do a recap of like that week of football and talk about the things that shocked me the most. I might do that, but I'm not entirely sure. I guess we'll just wait and see. But anyways, did you guys watch Seattle against Atlanta? Seahawks fans, how did it feel to watch that game? Did you notice that not once did we ever pull out our hair because we ran the ball on first down and then ran it on second and then threw an incomplete pass on third? Did you notice that? Did you notice the joy that you felt watching the Seahawks game? Hey, did you notice that we actually enjoyed it? I know it's probably a feeling that we're not too familiar with at this point, but I feel like this is a feeling that we're going to experience more. Let me give a shout out to Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll has been maligned and bullied online for the last few years about letting Russell Wilson actually throw the football. We all know, over the last few years, they play the game as if their quarterback was like Blake Bortles. I keep saying this. Against Dallas in the wild card round, Seattle should have won that game, but why didn't they? Because they tried to establish the run, and they ended up losing the game. Against the Packers this last year, they should have beaten the Packers. I firmly believe they should have beaten the Packers. Why didn't they? Because they tried to establish the run, and this is something that Pete Carroll has always tried to do in Seattle. He gets Marshawn Lynch, and he has a really good offensive line, and they're able to pound the football. And that's how they basically won their games. And then with Russell Wilson, obviously, he was just kind of a game manager, a mobile game manager, which is totally fine. But he wants to base his attack around the run. And then eventually the offensive line started to get really bad. But he kept thinking it was good, and he kept thinking that the run game was just gonna find itself. And sometimes it did, but most of the time it didn't. And as the NFL has moved on, it has become it's not the efficient way to play anymore. The more efficient way to play is to pass the ball on early downs, to not pay your running back a buttload of money, to more have a stable of running backs, to not draft a running back in the first round or in the second round, wait until like the 4th or the 3rd or the 5th. Chris Carson, obviously, I think it was a 5th round pick. Look at a guy like Austin Eckler with the Chargers. He was undrafted. You look at the running backs over in San Francisco. They use a stable. They don't necessarily just have one bell cow back. Now, sometimes Raheem Mostert is the guy, and he's the only guy, because sometimes he just absolutely gets it going. And I love Raheem Mostert, but you look, he was cut 7 times before finally finding a home in San Francisco. Alvin Kamara, 3rd round pick. You look at Dalvin Cook, 2nd round pick. Derrick Henry, 2nd round pick. Now, Christian McCaffrey, obviously, he's the best back in football, and he was a 1st round pick, but look at Saquon Barkley. He was a 1st round pick. He was an even higher 1st round pick than Christian McCaffrey. Did anyone think that Saquon Barkley looked good against the Steelers? Because I didn't. I thought he was running into a brick wall. Now, granted, it's not like the offensive line was necessarily helping him. I thought the Giants' offensive line played okay in spots, but all in all, it's not that great. They got a rookie. Nate Solder opted out. But just, my point is, as the time has gone on, the game has gone away from the running back. But Pete Carroll was slow to change. And that is why I said, kind of going into the season, I forgot which podcast said it, and there was a few podcasts ago, probably like one of my first podcasts I actually made. I said I thought Pete Carroll might age himself out of the NFL. He might be so rigid and stuck in his ways that he is going to just age out of the NFL with the Sean McVays and the Kyle Shanahans and what's going on with the Cardinals and with the Chiefs and with the Ravens, with the Texans, with all these teams having these explosive offenses that are pass first and that are just so creative. I thought Pete Carroll might find himself without a job simply because he refused to change. Even though his team might be set to win like 10 games a year or 11 games a year, whatever it might be, that there is a ceiling to him, and that's as far as they're going to get, and that the team's just going to have to move on from him so they can even go further. But after watching week 1, I don't want to overreact. I said this in my last podcast. I don't want to overreact. I am not a believer in overreacting to week 1. But oh my god, am I excited. They actually let Russell Wilson cook. Among all teams, Seattle passed the most on early downs. Seattle, these last few years, they have been like a bottom 10 team when it comes to that. They usually run it on first down. In my household, we have a saying. It's run, run, pass. That was Seattle's offense. That was our joke. It was run, run, pass. And it's not even much of a joke. That was actually kind of how Seattle liked to play. They'd run it on first down, get like a yard, run it on second down, you get maybe like 3, and all of a sudden you're in a 3rd and long, and then you passed it. And then most of the time, it was like incomplete, or it didn't actually go for the first down. It was ridiculous. It was an infuriating way to play. But they actually passed first. Russell Wilson finished that game over 300 yards passing. He had as many touchdowns as incompletions, which was 4. He was the 2nd highest graded quarterback in the NFL for week 1. He was sensational. When it came to the running backs, I think the running backs totaled like 17 carries in all outside of Russell Wilson. Like 17 total carries to his 35 pass attempts. That is a beautiful way to play football. I thought I was watching the Chiefs there for a little bit. This is the way that Seattle needs to play. Now for Seattle's defense, right? They made an acquisition in Jamal Adams. And you remember Greg Williams, he came out and Greg Williams, he was like, oh god, I don't know. I think he's going to get bored. I think, they're not going to use him the way that we used him. And I couldn't say Greg Williams was wrong, because Pete Carroll has always played the same defense. Single high safety, 1 in the box. If you go back to the Legion of Booms days, it was Earl Thomas up high, Cam Chancellor in the box, basically playing like an extra linebacker, and that is how I thought they would actually play with Jamal Adams. I didn't think Greg Williams was wrong in saying that. I thought he was probably right. His job was going to be really limited. Jamal Adams, they actually used him the way he was used in New York. He rushed the passer 11 times in his Seattle debut. That was the most rushes by a safety in a Pete Carroll era. He finished with a sack, 2 quarterback hits, and a hurry. And did you see the Jets against the Bills? Oh my god. Adam Gase, I don't think he's going to make it to Christmas. I really don't. I don't know if he's going to make it past week 5. It looked terrible. Their defense, awful. Their offense, awful. There's just no inspiration. It seems like the team already quit. But you're telling me they couldn't use Jamal Adams? Do you guys remember when I predicted the top 10 worst teams in the NFL for this coming season? I didn't have the worst team as Jacksonville. I kind of had them in the middle. I had the Jets as the worst team. I said the Jets are going to win 1 or no games. And I'm going to hold strong to that. I think this team is going to be a dumpster fire. I think they're going to need to blow it up, or they need to fire Adam Gase as soon as possible. And they need to try and save Sam Darnold, because he's taking a beating. Sam Darnold has looked just as bad, if not worse, than Baker Mayfield. And there's a lot of people out there who thought Sam Darnold would be better because he's more prototypical, he's bigger, he's stronger, all this yada yada yada. Baker Mayfield has looked, especially by the grade, I think he's looked better than Sam Darnold. Even though they've both not been great. Josh Allen kind of still looks like the winner. And you saw Josh Allen week 1. That was the best performance I think I've ever seen by him, even though his grade, his Pro Football Focus grade, is still not good. He is still graded as one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. They're doing everything they can to protect him. But anyways, I don't want to get too far off topic, but the Jets, God. I mean, my God. They look terrible. But when it comes to the Seahawks, On paper, their defense should be better this year than it was last year. Last year, they were ranked like 22nd, and I know they allowed a lot of yards to Atlanta, but they were also down the entire game, and they had to throw the football. So I don't want to put too much stock into all the yardage. I know they had 3 receivers with 100 yards, which is never good. If you look across the board at the secondary, the only player that actually graded really well was Jamal Adams. But I don't want to put too much stock into it. Bobby Wagner was still good. The linebacking core is still good. The defensive line performed better than I thought it would. Maybe that's more of a product of Atlanta's offensive line, but they're going to expect a lot out of guys like LJ Collier, DeMonte Moore. They're going to ask a lot out of him. Jaron Reed. They need a lot out of these guys. Jamal Adams, if they keep using him this way, I think their pass rush will just kind of find itself. It'll just be a bit makeshift. They'll probably have to blitz the way that a team like the Ravens did last year, where the Ravens, I think they blitzed the most in the NFL. And then on offense, they're going to need to play this way. I really do think they're going to need to play this way. Throw the football. Their offensive line is not good enough to run the football 30 times a game. Now, if they face Miami, as the Patriots showed, you can run the football on Miami. Now, I would think that the Patriots' offensive line is probably better than Seattle's, but I don't think it's that much better. So maybe if they face Miami, they can go ahead and pound the football, and Pete Carroll can go ahead and get that urge out to run past the football. But their next game is against New England, and I think that's going to be a really interesting game. The strength of New England's defense is the secondary, because as we saw, Fitzpatrick was picked off 3 times. It was a tough week 1. But Russell Wilson, he's never really been a high turnover guy. When he throws more than 1 interception in a game, it usually catches people off guard. At least I know it catches me off guard. If he throws 1, even then that surprises me. But throwing 2 is like almost unheard of when it comes to Russell. He's one of the lowest turnover quarterbacks in NFL history. So, with that being the strength of the defense, I would imagine this is probably a game for the tight ends, or maybe that's where you just kind of move Tyler Lockett around a bit more, try and put him more in the slot, get him away from Gilmore, get him away from McCourty, get him away from J.C. Jackson, because those guys are all ballers, and they showed it week 1, and they've shown it throughout their NFL careers. I would just hope that they don't run the football more. Please do not take this as an opportunity, Pete Carroll, to run the football more. Right now, everyone is praising the hell out of Pete Carroll. Do not ruin it after week 1. And then when it comes to defending the Patriots, this is going to be a really, really tough offense, I feel, to figure out. At least it's kind of like the Ravens, right? Most people know what you're going to get with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is going to run. It's a matter of, can you stop him? And you know that a couple times a game, he is going to take a deep shot for Brown, for Snead, he'll take a shot for Andrews, and again, it's just, can you stop it? But the running aspect of New England now, that hasn't existed in 20 years with Tom Brady, that running aspect of New England, I think is kind of going to be the same thing. Cam Newton is going to get probably like 10 carries a game, or he's going to get like 10 opportunities to run a game. Can you stop him? He's not as fast as Jackson. He's not as fast as Kyler Murray, but he's still fast. And he's big. He is tough to bring down. Now, something I did like out of Cam Newton in his week 1 game is that on some of his runs, he seemed to protect himself a bit better. Like, he wasn't looking for contact. He was actually sliding. He was going down to the ground in safer ways. And I think that's because he knows it's going to be a big part of their offense. Their offensive weapons are not great. Outside of Julian Edelman, there's no one you fear. So I feel like their offense for Seattle should be something easier to defend, because they don't have Julio Jones, and they don't have Calvin Ridley, and I don't remember who the other receiver that had 100, Gage, I think it was Gage. They don't have those guys. They have Edelman or bust. N'Keal Harry still hasn't really shown much, and he fumbled into the end zone against the Dolphins, which kind of cost them a chance at another touchdown. So I'll wait and I'll see. Again, I don't want to overreact too much, but the way they played against Atlanta was so what people have been waiting for. It's hard to not get excited. And I truly believe, I said this before, given all the pub that Russell Wilson has received during the offseason, him being ranked number 2 on the NFL's top 100 list, everyone talking about the fact he has never received a single MVP vote, all the people saying they need to let him cook. You're going to tell me now they're going to be a pass-first offense, and they're actually going to cater to his strengths? They're finally going to stop coaching him like he's Josh Allen, or like he's Blake Bortles, like he's some quarterback that's inaccurate and that needs the run game? They're going to actually treat him the way that they treated Aaron Rodgers, or Patrick Mahomes, or Deshaun Watson? There's no way he's not going to win the MVP. There's no way. We all know the MVP is a narrative-driven award, and when there's the chance for a feel-good story, they're going to give it to him. If Seattle's able to finish this year like 12-4, 11-5, and Russell Wilson leads the league in touchdown passes and passing yards, I don't think maybe he'll lead it in passing yards, but if he's like in top 5 in all those categories, and Seattle's one of the best teams in the league, and his numbers are just out of this world, you're going to tell me they won't give him the MVP? You're joking. I really do believe this is the year Russell Wilson finally gets the MVP. And if he doesn't get it, he's at least going to be like number 2 in voting. Unless you're going to tell me that Patrick Mahomes and like Lamar Jackson are going to throw damn near 5,000 yards and like be undefeated and break the touchdown record, then okay, maybe I'll go ahead and I'll change it. But even then, the narrative of Russell Wilson having never received an MVP vote, I think will be too strong for the voters to ignore. And they're gonna want to, you could say, quote, get it right. They're gonna want to right their wrong for not having given it to him beforehand. I loved watching week 1. I loved watching this Seattle team. And if it continues to show up throughout the year, this Seattle team is only that much harder to defend. And Russell Wilson might finally really have his shot to get his second Super Bowl championship. Anyways, coming up next. Stories are a big part of sports. Just talked about one with Russell Wilson. 2 teams during week 1 picked up victories, and I think the stories of what these teams have gone through to getting a victory week 1 were just outstanding. I want to talk about that coming up next.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Bryson Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Bryce. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. So call today at 1-800-MY-BET-US. That's 1-800-MY-BET-US, and they will walk you through getting started. Nobody in the industry gives better bonuses or bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. So join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com, or call 1-800-MY-BET-US, mention GSMC, and get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about Russell Wilson and the fact that they finally let him cook. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, they finally let Russell Wilson cook. It seems like they finally handed the reins of the offense over to Russell, and I believe if they keep this up, which I'm going to assume they are going to keep this up because it's probably their best, not probably, it is their best chance to win, that Russell Wilson will most assuredly win the MVP this year. He got so much pub this offseason, more pub than I've ever seen him get before. Everyone knows, even the voters know, Russell Wilson has never gotten an MVP vote. They are well aware. DeMarco Murray's gotten one. Ezekiel Elliott's gotten some. Derek Carr has gotten some. Russell Wilson never has. And I believe if the Seahawks finish this season going like 11-5, 12-4, if Russell Wilson keeps putting up these kinds of numbers and Seattle's a good team, there is no way they are not going to give the MVP to Russell Wilson. Could he still have competition for it? Sure, of course. But stories are a big thing in sports. Whether it's the NBA, baseball, NFL, doesn't matter. People always love a good story. Speaking of stories, Week 1 provided us with 2 really cool stories in my mind. Now, there were some other ones, right? Joe Burrow looked pretty damn good. Of course, with Seattle, they finally seemed to have dropped this old school offense and they're finally getting with the times, which people have been waiting for. Those are both 2 pretty cool stories. But there's 2 teams that won that were surrounded in controversy this offseason, that have been dealing with so much noise over the last few years even, that for them to pick up victories Week 1, I think really says something. The 2 teams I'm talking about are Jacksonville and the Washington football team. Let's go ahead and let's focus on Jacksonville first of all. Jacksonville, over the last 10 years, has had one good season. And it was the Saxonville year. That was the year where Blake Bortles, for whatever reason, his turnovers just cut down. He looked the best he had. They drafted Leonard Fournette. They had this stacked defense. Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye, Calais Campbell, and Yannick Ngakoue, and Malik Jackson, and Telvin Smith, and Miles Jack. They just had all this talent on the team. And they went 10-6 that year. They went to the AFC Championship game. And they had a lead in the fourth quarter, but they ended up losing the game in large part because the coaching staff tried to take the ball out of Blake Bortles' hands out of fear that he was going to revert back into Blake Bortles and they were going to lose the game because of him. Ultimately, it was the play calling that cost them that victory. They put their defense out there too much, they weren't scoring any points, and Brady did what Brady does, and they won the game. As the years then went on after that, after that championship run that they made, players just started complaining about being on the team, and they started getting rid of certain players. Jalen Ramsey, repeatedly, report after report, talking about how he wanted out of the team. They eventually traded him. AJ Boye, they went to him, they traded him. Calais Campbell, got rid of him. Bortles, gone. Fournette, gone. Jackson, gone. Telvin Smith went ahead and just up and retired. And then eventually it comes down to this offseason, when all of a sudden, you're looking at this team, and they have Yannick Ngakoue, and Yannick Ngakoue wants out. All he does is post on Twitter. He wants out of Jacksonville. Enjoyed his time there. Maybe kinda, whether or not that's true or not. But, says he's thankful they gave him a chance. But he wants to get the hell out of Jacksonville. And the Jags wouldn't trade him. And they kept saying they were going to wait for a good offer. They wanted a good offer. And there were reports there were these teams offering them like a first-round pick and a Pro Bowl player. And these teams were saying they really wanted Yannick. And the Jags still weren't trading him. And then finally they trade him to Minnesota for like a second-round pick. And then, then there's those who are trying to figure out, are they actually, was that the best offer they could get? Hold on, wait a second. Look at this team. Look at the talent on this team. Are they tanking this year? You remember this last year even. You had all this quarterback controversy. They move off of Blake Bortles. They drafted this kid Gardner Minshew, but he's slated to most likely just be the backup. And they signed Nick Foles, and they gave him a buttload of money. And they literally said the reason they gave him that contract was to send a message to the locker room. Nick Foles went on that season to, I think, play in like 2 games. And they went back to Minshew, and then they traded Nick Foles away to Chicago. And Nick Foles is now riding the bench in Chicago. And so going into this season, all of your good players are basically gone. The best players on this team, I would say, in my mind, is probably, what? On defense, it's Joe Schobert, and probably Miles Jack, and Miles Jack has been very, very inconsistent during his time in the NFL. If you go to the offense, I mean, it's Linder, you have Norwell, their tackle Cam Robinson, and then it's Minshew, DJ Chark, Westbrook. It's a bunch of pieces. No one on this team is necessarily a star, and everyone's looking at this upcoming NFL draft, and they're saying to themselves, oh, they're tanking, because they got nothing for Calais Campbell. They got nothing for Yannick Ngakoue, even though it's a 2nd-round pick. They got nothing for Ngakoue. They got nothing for Boye. They got nothing even for the safety. Is it Harrison that they traded to the Browns? They were just getting all these different picks. The big you could say trade that they made was when they traded away Jalen Ramsey. That was the trade in which they actually got some pieces for it. They really got some good draft picks for him. But everyone's looking at this team going into the season, and they're saying, okay, so they're tanking for Trevor. Because Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be one of the best quarterback prospects coming into the draft that there's been since, Elway and Andrew Luck, and everyone's hyping him up. He won the championship as a true freshman, and then his 2nd year, he didn't even seem to really be trying. And yet the team still went to the championship game, and you'd assume he's only going to get better from here. That, maybe like Sam Darnold. Some people said this about Sam Darnold. He was just getting a bit bored in college. He was just wanting to get to the next level where he would actually try. The ceiling's supposed to be really, really high. And that Trevor Lawrence was going to be this transformational talent. Well, what team needs transforming more than Jacksonville? Because they have been inept. Like I said, in the last 10 years, they have had one winning season. Other than that, they are perpetually well under 500. They are perpetually 4-12 or 3-13 or 5-11. They're awful. They are absolutely awful. In the 1 year in which they managed to get above 500, they had the number 1 defense in almost every single statistical category. That was the 1 year that they managed to do something good. And even then, they still didn't cap it off. The definition of inept. And so coming into this season, everyone's thinking, alright, they're going to get the number 1 overall pick. They're going to be terrible. This is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Even though I sat here and I continued to fight it and I continued to say, I don't know why people think this team's going to be so bad. It eventually got to the point where I just looked at all the pieces they traded and I said, oh, okay, they're going to do what Miami did. I still think they're going to do what Miami did. I still don't think, like I said, do not overreact to week 1, okay? They won a game. The 49ers ended up losing to the Cardinals. Okay, crazy things happen week 1. Not every team comes out with their best punch. And if you look at Phillip Rivers with the Colts, he was pretty good. Had 3 awful throws, because he should have had 3 interceptions. One of them got negated. He had 3 awful throws, but if you really want to, I guess, go with what counted, he had 2 bad throws that kept Jacksonville in the game, and ultimately they came away with the win. What I took away from that game is, number 1, and I said this for his rookie year, Gardner Minshew can play. He can play. He's a real quarterback. Which is why I don't think Jacksonville should be so quick to try and draft Trevor Lawrence. I think they should really give Minshew a chance. Are they ready to compete for a Super Bowl this year, next year, or even the year after that? Probably not. I don't think they're that ready. They are not even close to having the pieces. But this season, can they put up some fights? Do they have the ability on offense to stay with some teams and to be able to be competitive? Yeah, I think so. Their defense isn't great. They have a few players, like I said. But other than that, it's going to be an offensively driven team, I feel. It has to be. Jay Gruden's now calling the plays, and I thought he called a pretty good game for them against the Colts. The Colts especially, I mean, don't let week 1 fool you. The Colts are a real team. Their defense is good, especially their defensive line. It's a good defensive line. Their secondary, though it's young, they have some good players on offense. Best offensive line in football. Probably one of the best running back stables. Obviously, they ended up losing Marlon Mack, which is a big blow. But they drafted Jonathan Taylor. They got Himes. Their receiving core is a bit long in the tooth when it comes to, like T.Y. Hilton. But they're good. They're good at tight end. They've got some well-rounded receivers. I think they're still going to be a good team. Don't just write them off. But what a win for Jacksonville. Over these last few years, just losing player after player after player because nobody wants to be there anymore. For them to pick up a win week 1 in the fashion that they did, I think was just outstanding. And they were the only team week 1, well, at least on Sunday. They were the only team on Sunday that actually had fans in their stadium. And they got a win in front of those fans. I think that's outstanding. Gardner Minshew's a gamer. He's going to keep them in some games. He knows who he is. He knows how he has to play. Unlike a guy like Baker Mayfield, who apparently doesn't seem to quite know how to play. At least he doesn't know what he needs to do for his team. Minshew knows what he is. He can move a bit, but he's not out there trying to be Lamar Jackson. He knows he needs to more pass first. He needs to throw the football from the pocket. And I just think this team, it can definitely upset some people. Do not discount Jacksonville. On offense, they have enough firepower to put up points. Jay Gruden, I've seen him call plays before in Washington. He can come up with some good plays. He started his career as an offensive coordinator. Don't underestimate the Jags. I still think they're going to be a bad team. I still think they're going to finish below 500. But number 1 overall, pick 500, under 500? No. No. I'm going to reserve that for the Jets. Because the Jets look like garbage. Jacksonville looks like it can be a real team. The other team, the Washington football team. Such a ridiculous name. I saw a report that Dan Schneider said that could be their permanent name. I really hope it's not. But all the controversy surrounding this team, from getting pressure under Black Lives Matter to change their name, which was a derogatory term towards Native Americans. Whether or not you want to agree with it, it doesn't matter. It's a fact. So if you want to disagree with facts, then go ahead and be that guy. But from all the controversy surrounding their name to where they finally decided to change it. And then you have the articles come out detailing things going on in the organization. The harassment, the verbal abuse that seemed to be overlooked and underpunished that came out. Nothing indicted Dan Snyder necessarily as he did anything. I think it did cite like some alcohol abuse. But it was nothing like him abusing anyone, but people that worked in the business. And then when female employees would try to report it, nothing really happened. It was kind of a slap on the wrist. And sometimes it even just didn't seem like anything even happened. Ron Rivera all of a sudden gets diagnosed with cancer, but he decides he's going to keep coaching this season. And again, I am hoping for the best for Ron Rivera. He is a great man, a great man. And I really, really hope that he can beat this thing, but he's going to continue to coach. So also, you have that hanging over the team, and then you have Alex Smith coming back, and he's on the final 53-man roster. I didn't think they were going to cut him anyways. I think they would. There's a bit of the feeling they would feel guilty if they just cut him like that. They kept him on the team, all this time, even while he was doing his rehab and dealing with his leg injury. I think they'd just feel wrong if they did cut him. But he's on the team, and they're trying to figure out, are they going to make him the starter? Who's the starter? Okay, it's Dwayne Haskins. And then you go into week 1, and you're down 17-0 against the Eagles, and your defense comes alive. Dwayne Haskins delivers it. Apparently, he delivered a really, really good speech that clearly worked, because then they proceeded to outscore the Eagles 27-0 in a comeback victory. Dwayne Haskins in the second half looked better than he did all the first half. The defense sacked Carson Wentz 8 times. Chase Young looks like a player. That defensive line especially is going to wreak havoc on people. That Washington defense is good. It will be a good defense. I think that their stats might not show it in the long run, because I think their offense is very limited, and I think especially Dwayne Haskins, I just think he needs more time to get his feet a bit wet here in the NFL, because I'm not going to really count his rookie year. He didn't really have much of a chance there. This year is the year where he's finally going to have a real shot to do something. So I think in the long run, their defense will probably look bad on paper, but they have some real players there. They got some real young talent. And for them to pick up a win in the fashion that they did, with their defense coming alive, their young draft picks coming alive, with Dwayne Haskins delivering a speech to his team, Ron Rivera even had to get an IV during the game. The report said it was nothing serious, but more of just kind of like a precautionary thing. He just wanted to, he felt like he should. For them to get a victory week 1, I think is outstanding. Jacksonville and Washington have both dealt with so much over the last few years. And while a lot of it is self-inflicted, let's be honest, Jacksonville, it's all self-inflicted. They're bad because they're them. Washington, they've been bad, and they have the scrutiny in their organization because of them. But they're trying now to turn in a new direction. And what a way to kick off the season on the right foot. In the NFC, in the NFC East? The NFC East. In the NFC East, Washington is the only team that won a game. They are currently on top of their division. Now, in the long run, they're probably going to be 3 or 4. They're either going to finish second to last or last in their division. I firmly believe that. When it comes to the AFC South, who is it? Jacksonville, Tennessee, they both picked up wins. They were the only teams that picked up victories. In the long run, I think Jacksonville's going to finish like 3rd or 4th in their division. I would probably say 3rd, but just, I guess, moral of the story, guys, sports are cool. Sports are really, really cool, and they provide us with such interesting stories and such heartwarming stories that you can really wrap your arms around. And I'm not saying these are heartwarming stories in the slightest. That's not what I'm saying. A heartwarming story would be if Alex Smith got called on to go win the game for Washington week 1. If Dwayne Haskins got knocked out and then their backup, I don't know who their backup is, because I think Alex Smith is the 3rd stringer on the team. But if it came down to Alex Smith to win it, and he did, that would be heartwarming. I just think it's really, really cool how these two teams have dealt with so much, especially this offseason. They've been under so much scrutiny this offseason. For them to pick up wins in the fashions that they did, in both cases, just flat out outplaying the other team, is really, really cool. And I give props to them. I still think they're going to be, I had both these teams finishing in the top 10 for the worst teams in the league. I still think they're going to do that. But, hey, great way to kick off the season. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk about some Burrow and some Baker looking ahead to the Thursday night matchup. And stay tuned, my final topic of the day, 10 things that shocked me from week 1. That coming up later. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about two stories from week one that I really liked, with the Washington football team and with the Jacksonville Jaguars having won their opening games in the fashions that they did. Jacksonville just basically outplaying the Colts in, playing them score for score, forcing Phillip Rivers into a few mistakes. Gardner Minshew looks like the guy. They've dealt with so much in the offseason, trading away player after player after player. It's tanking for Trevor. Gardner Minshew comes out and says, no, I'm not going to let that happen. And they win their opening game. I still think they're going to be one of the 10 worst teams in the NFL, but it was a great week one victory. And as for the Washington football team, we already know everything they've had to deal with this offseason. Changing their name, the articles that came out talking about everything going on in the organization over the last few years. Alex Smith comes back. Ron Rivera gets diagnosed with cancer. They have had to deal with a lot. And then they're down 17 points to the Eagles, and they score 27 unanswered points, and they pitch a shutout in the second half to ultimately win the game. I thought it was a great story. It was a great story. It was a great game, a great week one victory. Again, Washington will be, by the end of the season, one of the 10 worst teams in the NFL. I think I predicted them as one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL. But I do think they're moving in the right direction. Their defensive line is real. Their defense, in general, is real. Now, I think their offense is going to put them in very bad positions. I think they're going to spend a lot of time out there, which means teams are going to have the ability to put more yards on them. So by the end of the year, they're probably not going to look like a great defense, but I think they'll be high in certain categories, such as like rushing the passer, getting hits on the quarterback, getting sacks. I think they'll be high in that category, but other than that, I think they will be relatively bad. But anyways, another story from week one that I really liked revolved around Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, I thought, was going to go into week one, and I thought he was going to get killed by the Chargers. I thought it was going to be a blowout. And this is where I was wrong. I did not realize that the Chargers were going to look so inept on offense. I had no clue. I thought, and I don't want to talk about the Chargers too much during this segment, but I guess just to say this, I thought that with Tyrod Taylor becoming the starter, I thought they were going to run some kind of an offense like the Ravens. I thought they were going to use Taylor the way that they kind of use Lamar. I did not realize that they were going to use Taylor like he's Phillip Rivers, and that they were going to have him drop back 30 times. I didn't realize that. I thought they were going to actually run it. I thought they were going to do some more zone read stuff. I was completely wrong about the Chargers there. But to focus on Burrow and what he did, if you look at his stats, it's nothing major. He completed 23 of 36 passes, which is 63%, about 64% to round up, for 193 yards. It's only 5.4 yards per attempt. And it was for no touchdowns, an interception. He carried the ball 8 times for 46 yards and had a rushing touchdown. But the thing that really impressed me is that even with the Chargers defense swarming him, which they were, Joey Bosa was a madman. They put pressure on him all day. Casey Hayward, I think he won Defensive Player of the Week for the AFC. He was a monster, breaking up passes. This is one of the best secondaries in the NFL, if not the best secondary in the NFL, one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, and they terrorized Burrow all day. But Burrow was able to consistently get his team into field goal range, and Randy Bullock, who doesn't get credit, and I think he's getting killed for what happened at the end of the game, but he's one of the more consistent kickers in the NFL. And sure enough, I mean, he's just nailing field goal after field goal. The Bengals have a lead, and the Chargers just look terrible. And then it's just some costly turnovers. Joe Burrow had a terrible turnover in the red zone, where he did a shovel pass, and he basically threw it right to the D lineman. I think it was Ingram that he threw it to. He threw it right into his arms. As if he was the receiver, and that was probably the worst mistake he made, and it ended up being the fatal mistake, because the Chargers go ahead and they take the lead, and then it comes down to Burrow with, I think, how many, I don't know, did they have any timeouts? Maybe like a timeout, and under 2 minutes left, and they need to get a field goal to tie the game to get to overtime. Because I don't think anyone thought they were going to actually be able to get a touchdown. But they were consistently able to get into field goal range. And sure enough, what does he do? Boop, 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 down the field, and they're in field goal range. And it should be an easy field goal for Randy Bullock. And I remember sitting there watching the TV, and there was just something about it that didn't feel right. And I'm watching it with my family, and I look over, and I'm like, he's gonna miss this. He's gonna shank it. Watch. And about 3 seconds later, kicked it, far right, shanked it, and then he grabbed his leg. And then in an interview, he said he heard his left leg, but it was his right leg that he grabbed. So now people think Randy Bullock is full of it, and that he just choked, and that he just faked an injury. It kind of reminds me of what that Buffalo kicker did against Seattle a few years ago when Buffalo played in Seattle, when Taylor was still there, and LaShawn McCoy was still there starting running back and everything. Their kicker kind of did the same thing. It was an incident involving Richard Sherman, and then the wife of the kicker got involved in it, and that got ugly. But nonetheless, they didn't end up winning. People kind of say, oh, the kicker got bangled. Hey, Burrow, welcome to the Bengals. This is the kind of stuff that happens to them. They are one of the unlucky teams in the NFL. Certain teams just have certain stigmas around them. The Chargers, if you're a Charger, you're most likely going to get hurt. If you are the Browns, you will find any which way to lose, and it's the same thing with the Bengals. You will find any which way to lose. Even in situations when you should win it, you still might lose. So it was unfortunate. It sucked. It would have been nice to see in overtime. It would have been nice to see if Burrow could become, what was it? I think only the 4th number 1 overall pick in NFL history to actually win their season opener. I think they said only 3 have ever done it before, and that Burrow was looking to be, to join a rare class. Well, not this year. Guess we'll have to see what happens next year, where Trevor Lawrence goes, and whether or not he even actually is going to be the week 1 starter, depending on whatever team actually does get to draft him. Who the hell knows? But either way, looking at Joe Burrow's performance, and just given everything that's around him, not a great offensive line, he was facing that defense, I gotta give him credit. He played pretty good. And this is the thing that I said as the season came nearer. I came out and I said, I think Joe Burrow can handle the pressure of the NFL, and he can handle the pressure of playing for the Bengals. And my whole thing was because this dude, at his age, early 20s, he is already, as a raw rookie, he hadn't thrown an NFL pass yet. He hadn't stepped on foot to an NFL field. No preseason even. Nothing. He had literally proven nothing. For this dude to be able to go on Twitter and to be so open about politics in the climate that we are in, for him to tweet about matters like Black Lives Matter and to take the side of Black Lives Matter when we all know there is a base of people out there who are doing everything in their power to discredit it, to call it a sham. They want athletes to stick to being athletes. They don't want politics in their athletes, even though human rights, in my opinion, is not political, no matter what anybody says to me. It is not political. For Joe Burrow to come out and to be so outspoken at his age as a raw rookie about it, I thought that said a lot. And I thought that said to me, he can handle the pressure of the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to break this kid as easily as it's broken other people. I think this guy can actually handle it, and I think he could have some success with it. And I believe I saw it at the Chargers. Now, to go over to their in-state rival, the Cleveland Browns. Wow. I mean, really. Wow. Baker? You know, I know that Baker, he came out this offseason and he kind of went on an apology tour, and he talked about how, you know, this offseason and this season, he's going to do his best to ignore the media and to ignore the comments, and he's going to do less talking, and he's going to focus on himself because he wants to succeed. All that talk. All that talk. And the Browns get a new head coach, and they get these new pieces. They sign Austin Hooper, and they sign Jack Conklin, so now the offensive line is better. And they draft a really good tackle. And they have Myles Garrett back. And, everything. Yes, they did lose Schober, and they lost Demarius Randall, but they still got these other pieces, and it's another year of Baker and Odell, and Baker's more in shape, Odell's healthy, Jarvis is healthy, and Njoku is healthy, Chubb's back, Hunt's back, everything. You drop 6 points against Baltimore. Cleveland took on Baltimore, of course, they take them on twice every year, but last year, in Cleveland's first game against Baltimore, they destroyed Baltimore, and that was with Freddie Kitchens calling the plays. And we all know Cleveland could not have waited any quicker. They couldn't have waited to get Freddie Kitchens out of the building. They did it with Freddie Kitchens. They dominated the Ravens. Baker had probably his best passing performance that whole year against the Ravens. And this year, not this year, but this game, 21 of 39, 189 yards, 1 touchdown and a pick. What was that? They were better off running the football. No joke. They were better off running the football. Hunt and Chubb both averaged over 5.5 yards a carry. Why? They were better off running the football. What happened? What happened to this team? Odell Beckham. Where did he go? He has vanished in Cleveland. Jarvis Landry, he appears to be the only target that actually works with Baker. I am officially on the wagon of trade Odell Beckham. I'm officially on the wagon. Trade Odell. Odell, since he's come to Cleveland, he has done nothing for them. He's given them a really cool name. He's given them some star power, but Odell's star is slowly fading, and there's no way he's happy with the way that things are going right now. And it's not like Baker's not trying to get him the ball. He's trying to. It's just not working. What did he do? Did he target him 13 times or something against the Ravens? And he caught 3 passes? It's not good. Odell, I think in his whole time with Cleveland, has had maybe 2 good games. Realistically, 2 or 3 good games with Cleveland. Every other game has been a stinker. It's just average. In Cleveland, he is an average wide receiver. With the Giants and Eli Manning, this dude was a Hall of Fame caliber receiver. And now he's disappeared into the ether. There's only so long that you can say it's a coach's fault before you gotta look at the dude who's captaining the ship. And it's Baker Mayfield. And I will go on record again and I will say, I do not believe he has received a fair shake. This is his 4th head coach. His rookie year, he has Hugh Jackson. They then fire Hugh and their offensive coordinator. Greg Williams takes over as the interim head coach. Freddie Kitchens takes over at play calling. His 2nd year, they don't even bring back Greg Williams as the defensive coordinator. Instead, they promote Freddie Kitchens to head coach. He lasted a season. Now we're on to Stefanski. In 3 years, 4 head coaches, 4 different offensive systems. Or is it, Yeah. I think it's 4. Or 3. 3 different offensive systems. How do you succeed in that? Josh Rosen, right? How was he supposed to succeed? Sam Darnold, right now in the NFL. How was he supposed to succeed? You know who's succeeding right now? Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson just won the MVP. Josh Allen appears to only be getting better, though his Pro Football Focus grade still doesn't show it, and he's still a fumble machine. And he's still wildly inaccurate at times. He appears to be getting better, and his coaching staff is is a big part of that because they have allowed him to have stability. Baker appears to be falling apart. And I don't want to overreact to week 1. I don't want to. I don't believe in it. Because what a team is in week 1 isn't even the same team by week 5, week 6. By week 5, week 6, we are going to know what these teams are, and we will have a very, very good idea on who the top teams are going to be, maybe what teams could possibly sneak in because they're just inconsistent, but when they're on, they're on, when they're off, they're off. We will know by then. So I do not want to write off the Browns. I still think they have a lot of talent. This is a new system. Like I said, going into the season, I thought these teams would be the ones to struggle. And let's be honest, just like Brady had a real tough challenge taking on Tampa Bay in the season opener, the Browns didn't have it any easier. They had to take on the Baltimore Ravens. And who were the Baltimore Ravens? Oh, they were only 14-2 last year. They only shattered the record for rushing yards in a season. They only had a unanimous MVP in Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, it was kind of a tough challenge. I don't want to write them off. But it is very, very concerning. And I'm reading these reports, and I'm seeing reports from Pro Football Focus, and I'm listening to sports pundits all over the place, and they're talking about Baker's game, and they're saying he doesn't know how to play his game. He doesn't know what his game is. And they bring up, who does know how to play his game? Gardner Minshew. Minshew knows what he is. He is sort of mobile. He's mobile enough to extend some plays. He's mobile enough to get some first downs with his feet if he needs to. But all in all, he knows how to play his game, and he knows he needs to play it from the pocket, and he needs to be a true passer. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield seems to think he's a bit more athletic than he really is. And he just doesn't play his game anymore. His rookie year, he played his game. And since then, he has been off, and he hasn't gotten back on. And this is something that, the head coaching staff, if this is true, right? And I definitely am not going to say it's wrong, because I definitely see there's a difference in his play, his rookie year to now. His rookie year, he looked a lot more sure of himself. Now, he doesn't seem to. If this is true, his coaching staff is doing him a disservice by not pounding this into him. And if they are pounding it into him, and he's just not listening, then you need to move on. Put Case Keenum in. Case Keenum has worked with Stefanski. This is even more talent than he had in Minnesota. I bet you Case Keenum could make it work. And I love Baker, and I want to see Baker work. But these teams face off tonight. And if they lose this game against the Bengals, there will be hell to pay. I guarantee there will be a report. Odell Beckham has unfollowed the majority of Browns players. He's taken off the Browns decal on his social media that Baker Mayfield or that Odell wants to trade. I bet you that will be a report. If they lose this game, and they lose it badly, and when I say badly, I don't just mean a blowout, I mean it could be 10-3. It could be 20-15. It could even be a low-scoring game. But if it's just the offense is inept, and they don't seem to be able to do anything right, and it's just an ugly game, I bet you someone is going to complain about something. I bet you Odell's going to want out. There might be some other players who are kind of ditching. There are probably some reports saying that the guys want Case Keenum in. How long until Case Keenum comes into play? Because remember, this regime is not tied to Baker. Right now, there are people out there who believe Joe Burrow might be better than Baker. And while I am not going to go that far, if we were to judge performances based off of week 1, you're not going to get much pushback from me. You just won't. You're not going to get much pushback from me. I can't fight it. Their week 1 performances, Joe Burrow looked a lot more sure of himself. Joe Burrow, from my eye perspective, given the chaos that he had around him, a worse offensive line, a worse receiving core, a worse defense. the chaos and the dysfunctionality that the Bengals have been perpetually throughout NFL history. And they still managed to score more points week 1 than Baker and all that firepower on offense. Sure, his kicker missed a field goal and an extra point. Woo. It still would have been less points than the Bengals put up. It was just terrible. It was not a good showing, and these two teams, I'm going to predict that the Browns are going to win, and I think they're going to win very, very comfortably. I think they're going to, I'm not going to say they're going to blow them out, but I can definitely see them winning by like 10 points. If they lose this game, there will be hell to pay. Let me just make that very clear. Baker, don't lose this game, dude. If you lose this game, your job is in jeopardy. No doubt. Because the Browns do not want to punt on this season. And I think Stefanski really likes Case Keenum. And if you suck, I have no doubt in my mind that they will think about putting Case Keenum in. Your leash is going to shorten to about an inch. And as soon as you make a bad throw, you're gone. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day. We're going to get into 10 things from week 1 that absolutely shocked me. No particular order, nothing like that. Just 10 things that shocked me from week 1. That coming up next, final topic of the day. Thank you for tuning in.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Final topic of the day. Last segment talked about Burrow looking good and Baker looking yikes. And they face off tonight, and I'm going to be tuning into the game. And if the Browns lose, I will be right back on here to talk about it and to talk about how Baker Mayfield, his job is in jeopardy, at least in my opinion, because there's no way that the Browns are going to punt on this season, even with the chaos that has been the off season and all the insurity and not having the proper time to work, to train and to practice together, everything. There's no way they're just going to punt on this season. The Browns, from a talent perspective, have one of the best rosters in the NFL. There is no way they're punting on this year. So they need to get it together. They just do. But anyways, we're going to get into my top 10 surprises from week 1 of the NFL season. Now, this isn't going to be in any particular order. There was no ranking. I thought about maybe ranking it, but then I realized there's just not a point. There was just a bunch of cool things that happened. I want to talk about it. There were a lot of things that kind of surprised me, so let's just go ahead and get right into this. So, the first thing that really surprised me was how much the NFL needs fans. The NBA, I think they have shown with the product that they have put out, they do not need the fans. Do the fans enhance the game? Sure. But do they need it? Could I watch the NBA like this for the rest of time if it really was to be like this? Yeah, I could. I could totally watch it like this. The NBA has shown that while the fans are great for the game and they do add to the TV product, they don't need them. The NFL, on the other hand, I think they need the fans. Because there's too many shots of an empty stadium And even though putting cardboard cutouts, it helps a little bit, and pumping in the sound helps a little bit, there are some operators of the sound that are better than others. Some of them get it right on cue. There are some that don't seem to know which buttons to hit at the right time. The cheers come in so late, or the opposing team makes a play, and they seem to get a louder cheer than the actual home team does. It just, they're trying things out. It's week 1. I'm sure they'll get better. But the NFL needs fans. And I guess I never really realized how badly they need fans until week 1. There's nothing quite like watching the Saints play in the Superdome with 0 fans and hearing the Buccaneers get as many cheers and get as loud of a cheer as the Saints did. That really caught me off guard. So that was the first thing that really surprised me. The NFL needs fans. Another thing that surprised me, a second thing that surprised me, Pete Carroll changed. At least for a week. Now, Pete Carroll did come out and he said that, the run game is going to get more opportunities. He feels like just running the ball 20 times isn't enough. The guys need more carries. And look, I guess if you're playing a team like the Dolphins, and they really don't have a good run defense, then sure, maybe you run it more than 20 times. The Patriots ran it 40 plus. But at the same time, Pete, you gotta remember, your offensive line isn't good. Pete, you did a great thing week 1. You let Russell Wilson cook. Seattle passed first the most on early downs. They statistically played the most efficient football, or at least they were top 3 in playing efficient football. They let Russ cook. He was phenomenal. He had as many incompletions as he did touchdowns. Do not ruin this, Pete. Do not ruin this, because we will all be right back to bullying you online. We will all be right back to tweeting at you and posting, let Russ cook, you're wasting Russell, you're not coaching him correctly. We will all be back to doing that until you let him cook. I liked the change for week 1. They take on New England next. I am interested to see how they decide to play New England, because I think it could go one of 2 ways. Either they will continue and they will let Russ cook, and that was just Pete saying, if the opportunity presents itself, we'll run the football more. Was he maybe just planting a seed to make the opposing teams think, oh, we're going to have to deal with Seattle's run game. Yes, this is exactly what we want to deal with, and then he's going to let Russell cook? I have no idea. I have no idea what it is. All I know is Pete Carroll needs to not ruin a good thing. A third thing that surprised me, Bruce Arians. He laid into his team, and specifically 2 players. I have not seen a head coach be this blunt before, maybe since Bill Belichick. This was incredible. So not only does he, after the game, say that both interceptions were on Tom Brady, he then later came back and he said that, he realized that the first one was actually on Mike Evans and not on Tom Brady. But it's the simple fact that he came out immediately following the game, and he called out Tom Brady and said, oh yeah, no, that was Brady's fault. Yeah, no, that was all Brady's fault. Do you remember why Tom Brady left New England? He said one of the problems Giselle had, was the fact that Bill Belichick, on a consistent basis, would just rip Tom Brady to shreds, whether it be in practice sessions or sometimes in media sessions. He'd throw his quarterback under the bus, like with the Deflategate, saying, I don't know, you have to ask my quarterback about that. The controversy of, is he going to trade Brady away so he can start Jimmy Garoppolo? Everything going on. And then Bruce Arians just comes out and completely throws him under the bus, and then he threw his left tackle under the bus, saying he was really disappointed in his performance because he had the easiest dude to block. And wow. That really caught me off guard. I did not expect to see Bruce Arians lay into his team so harshly during only week 1. It was just week 1. That was their first game. They played the Saints. My gosh, Bruce, calm down just a little bit. You don't have to be that harsh. I don't think the Buccaneers played a good game at all. but I also think they face one of the best teams in the NFL in the Saints week 1, and this is a new system. Brady, there is a learning curve. He's not going to come out and throw 50 touchdowns. That's not the way it's going to be. Just take your time. This is going to be a bit of a slow process. I think the Buccaneers will probably be a playoff team, probably a wild card team. Give him some time. But Bruce Arians, it surprised me how harshly he laid into his team. And I guess to stay with that game, let's go ahead and go to the fourth thing that surprised me. Drew Brees looked rough. He finished with a Pro Football Focus grade of 57. For Drew Brees' standards, that's terrible. He was 18 of 30 for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. His average yards per attempt were 5.3. Very, very un-Drew Brees-like. Michael Thomas, for the first time in I don't know how long, had a terrible game. You remember last year, what did he do? He opened the season with 9 or 10 straight games of 10 catches. I mean, it was ridiculous what he was doing to teams. It was absolutely ridiculous what he was doing. And then that game, he was held to I don't remember what his final stat line was. He was held to under 50, 40 yards, and he had 3 catches or something. I mean, he did not have a great game, and he had a high ankle sprain, and now he's out for a few weeks. It was not a great game, and I thought Drew Brees looked old. Watching that game, I understand why he contemplated retirement. He doesn't look like he has it anymore. At least from week 1. Judging off of week 1, it doesn't look like Drew Brees is that dude anymore. It looks like this team should have probably moved to Taysom Hill. Now again, I don't want to overreact. It was just week 1. Let's wait and we'll see once they get more of a rhythm together and everything, once the things get back to flowing. But given week 1, it did not look good. It did not look good for Drew Brees. I thought he looked very, very old, and I can definitely see the writing is on the wall for Drew Brees to, at some point in time, go away. I guess the fifth thing that surprised me, I talked about it already, the Browns. Baker was terrible. He was flat out awful, and with all the pieces that this team had, even though there wasn't the hype train around this team that there was last year, people did try to temper their expectations, it was still thought that the Browns should go into the season with Stefanski as the new head coach, and they should be able to be one of the high-scoring elite offenses in the NFL, and week 1 they were anything but that. They weren't good on defense, they weren't good on offense, their special teams couldn't even get it together either. They were probably, at least you would probably say statistically, they were the worst team. I think you'd look at the box score and you'd say they were the worst team. I still think that goes to the Jets. But the Browns were not good. And if they lose to the Bengals, dear God, it will be DEFCON 5 in Cleveland. It will not be good. And I think Baker Mayfield's job is going to be on the line, because I think Stefanski likes Case Keenum. He's worked with Case Keenum. Case Keenum led them to the NFC Championship. And even though he played great for a drive and then he stunk, he doesn't have any attachment to Baker. This was not the regime that drafted him. He has no attachment to him. I firmly believe he would move off of him if he had the opportunity to. At number 6, the Chargers. The Chargers just looked gross. I did not expect them to look that bad. And it made me start thinking, how long is it that they can allow their offense to look like this before they put in Justin Herbert? How long? Joe Burrow did what he did to the Chargers with significantly less talent on the team. A worse offensive line, a worse receiving core, a worse running back situation, and he did that? Are you going to tell me he's that much better than Justin Herbert? Is he that much more ready? Especially even like Tua. Again, I think the Chargers are playing the wrong offense. I think, how did Taylor have 6 carries for 7 yards? How? How did Taylor only have 6 carries for 7 yards? When Taylor's on the field, he is quicker than most of the other players on the team. He's shiftier than most of the other players on the team. If you look at just quarterbacks across the board in the NFL, is there anyone who's going to deny that Taylor is the second fastest quarterback in the NFL? You guys should be running the football consistently with him. Consistently. He should be getting a lot of zone reads. You should be doing a lot of option plays. Taylor should be on the move like Lamar Jackson. He should not be in the pocket passing 30 times. That's just not what he should be doing. That's not his game, not in my opinion. So I thought the Chargers looked really bad. I was not impressed. He finished the game with a Pro Football Focus grade of 60. In his 3 years as a starter in Buffalo, he was a top 14 quarterback. All 3 years, his highest grade was 9th in the NFL. I'm just saying, how long can you play this style of offense and look that slow and just not effective before you go to your rookie and just say, you know what? We need some juice. Go ahead, Herbert. Let's see what you can do. I think it happens sooner than later, especially if they continue to play like this. I guess to stay with the same game, number 7, the fact that the Bengals had a chance to win. Burrow had a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. Now, they did, of course, go for the tie, but with a chance to tie the game and go into overtime, and the way that game was looking, the Chargers didn't look great. The best aspect of their team really was their defense. And even then, I mean, let's just say, in the event that, given how many trips the Bengals made into their red zone, or not into the red zone, but onto their side of the field, and Burrow did throw a good touchdown pass that I think just got negated, the Bengals, you could almost say they outplayed the Chargers. You could realistically almost say they outplayed them. And so I don't know if it was more of a product of just the Chargers looking inept on offense. I think if Phillip Rivers was commanding that offense, it would look different. It would be more explosive in the passing game. They would put up more points. But still, the fact he had a chance to win, at least to tie it, head into overtime, the way the game was looking, it could have gone either way. I think it was unfortunate, but it looks like the Bengals have a player. Burrow looks like a gamer after week 1. With not a lot of talent, facing one of the best defenses in the NFL. I thought it was a really good week 1 performance, and I definitely did not see it coming. I thought that game would be a blowout, and I was wrong. At number 8, I have the Jags actually winning their season opener. Look, I have been pounding the table podcast after podcast saying, I didn't understand why so many people were out on Jacksonville. Why did so many people think Jacksonville was going to be such an awful team? I looked at their offense, and I looked at enough players on their offense to put up points. And when I looked at their defense, I looked at Schobert, I looked at Miles Jack, if Miles Jack could return back to his form his second season. I looked at their first round pick, Chris Henderson. I looked at there was some talent on the team. They did draft a defensive lineman in the first round a couple years ago. Was it Taven Bryan? They have some players on their defense, but all in all, I thought they were going to be an offensively led team. The fact that they realistically forced Phillip Rivers into 3 turnovers, 2 that counted, but 3 turnovers, and they won that game, given all the players that they have drafted away, and this is supposed to be the team that's, quote, tanking for Trevor. Gardner Minshew can play. And I think they should really give him a chance to be their quarterback. Because he knows who he is. And I think all you gotta do is surround him with some good pieces. Can you imagine if the 2017 Jaguars had Gardner Minshew as their quarterback? They might have won the Super Bowl. No joke. They might have won the Super Bowl if Gardner Minshew was their quarterback in the Saxonville year. No way. He is far and away better than Blake Bortles has ever been. He is far less turnover prone. And it's a shame. It's a shame that Jacksonville got him now and they couldn't have had him a few years ago. Because my gosh, how their fortunes may have changed. At number 9, the Washington comeback. Again, the Eagles against Washington, I knew that they were injured, and I saw a lot of people hyping up Washington's defense, but I looked at Dwayne Haskins, and I didn't really know what I was going to get from him. And even then, if you look how he played in the first half, he wasn't good. If you look at this Pro Football Focus grade, it's not great. He's in the bottom half of the league. But he delivered a powerful speech to the team. It apparently really did work and it rallied them. And they pitched a shutout in the second half. They got after Carson Wentz. I think he finished the week as the most pressured quarterback, or at least he was, top 3, top 2 quarterbacks under pressure. The Washington defense is real. And I did not see them doing that, and I especially didn't see them doing it. 27 unanswered points to win the game? Wild. Now, I don't think that's going to happen again for them, but against a beat-up team that had some really questionable play calling, Carson Wentz still appears to be doing too much. And just, he isn't, when I think, it's like, when he should target his tight ends, he goes for his receivers. And when he should target his receivers, he goes for the tight ends. And he takes too many hits, and he takes bad hits, and he extends the play too long, and he makes errant throws. Carson Wentz has some issues himself to work out. But I thought it was a great win for Washington. That's the 9th thing that surprised me, and I guess the 10th thing that surprised me. These teams actually look pretty good. There weren't really any teams outside of like the Jets and the Browns that I watched that looked awful. And a lot of people were talking about it. With no preseason, not much training, like no training camp, limited practices, no team scrimmages, nothing like that. With the off-season being as condensed as it was, a lot of people were expecting these games to be pretty low scoring, for there to not be much continuity, for a lot of these teams to look, pretty pedestrian. And I thought these games looked pretty good. The product on the field as a whole from a viewing standpoint, still from my perspective, isn't the best. I miss the fans. But from the product on the field, looked pretty damn good to me. The Seahawks, Falcons, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chiefs, Texans, the Raiders, Panthers, all these teams, they look pretty good. And they put on some pretty good games. So I guess I didn't expect that. I did expect to see these games be a bit more low scoring. I didn't expect to see any team drop only 6 points like Cleveland did. But I did expect games to be a bit more low scoring, maybe like in the 17-25 kind of range, like 17 to 10 kind of range, something like that. But I was impressed. I thought a lot of these teams, they look pretty prepared. And again, it's the veteran quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins. These were the guys that performed really well. And while some of these guys did start off a bit slow, and then they picked it up in the second half, there were still some guys this is week 1. Some of these guys are going to start a bit slower, but just give them time. Russell Wilson throughout the season should only get better. Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Kirk, Brady, these guys should only get better as the season goes on, and as they get more continuity with some of the newer pieces on these teams, they should only get better. And I think we're going to be in for a really good season when it comes to the on-the-field product, and I can only hope that more and more fans can get into these games, that people continue the social distance, people wear their mask, so that we can get back to a point where we have a full stadium. How great would it be if by the time the Super Bowl comes around, we could get a full stadium? That would be outstanding. Because if they play a Super Bowl with with sound in like 10,000 people, that's gonna look so strange. That will look so strange. It will be probably one of the most underwhelming Super Bowls of all time because the fans are a huge part of the action in Super Bowls. But those are the 10 things that surprised me the most week 1. Can't wait to watch week 2 action. Can't wait to talk about it. Browns, Bengals. Browns better win that game. If they don't, it will be man overboard. Anyways, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. And have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.